So Kawaki has finally moved the plot forward as it relates to the Age of Shinobi coming to an end, and it all centers around this convo with Amado about the new functions of his body. Now I can see why some might not have picked up on this given the mind-breaking, lore-bending events of the recent chapters, such as Boruto telling Sarada that he wants her, something that didn't actually happen, but I had to do it. It was pretty much begging me to do it. But also, we do have some other stuff that's going on with Jura and Hidari, which I'm going to save for another video. This one is going to be focused on Kawaki being a fraud and why that leads to the downfall of the Shinobi system. The seed has already been planted. Now as you know, Kawaki was summoned to Amado's lab in the prior chapter. Kawaki then arrives to a lab filled with tiny toads. Amado then tells him that their core base is identical to that of Kashin Koji's, but these are his special units, and he has complete control over them, which comes into play later on. He then goes on to show Kawaki the system that controls his combat powers, because as we know, Kawaki has a limiter which allows Amado to adjust the percentages of his offense and defense based on what Kawaki wants and also based on what Amado wants as well. Because as we see here, Amado has it set to 85% for attack and 15% for defense. Now Kawaki finds this to be problematic because he wanted all of the percentages, all of the power to be diverted to his attack and leave his defense completely diminished. Which of course is very stupid, as Amado himself points out. The reason why Kawaki is even still alive is because of that 15%. You never know what can happen in battle. Someone can sneak you from behind or use an attack you've never seen before, or you could simply overheat. And if for some reason you don't have any defense, then you have no durability, no endurance, and no regeneration. All of that is set to 0. In fact, I would argue that the reason why Kawaki overheated in the recent chapters so quickly is because his defense was set to 15. That means his endurance is set to pretty low, which means he can only endure the force of his own attacks for only so long before his body overwhelms itself. Kinda similar to what happened to Jigen and Ishiki. Ishiki's power was way too much for Jigen's body to handle, and that caused his body to literally destroy itself, and even Ishiki, when restored and revived inside that body, didn't have much time to live. That is an issue of endurance, which is also linked to defense. So Kawaki is actually having a very similar issue to Ishiki and Jigen here. It just shows itself in a very different way when it comes to overheating. Now what's really important here and how this relates to the entire Age of Shinobi's over fiasco is how Amado tries to alleviate the issue with Kawaki, because he does go on to help him with the entire situation of getting his defense to 0 and his attack potency to 100 all the time, or whenever Kawaki wants it to be, and he does this using one of his toads. He goes on to tell Kawaki that as long as one of these toads are attached to his body, he has the power to manually and instantly adjust the parameters of Kawaki's offense and defense. So whenever Amado wants to change Kawaki to 100%, for example, let's say Kawaki is about to attack Jura, he can just divert all of his power to his attack potency and leave him utterly defenseless. But let's say, for example, Kawaki is in a close quarter combat with Jura. You want to up the defense a bit just in case something happens and Jura gets a jab in. You don't want that, because of course if Kawaki is set to 0% defense and Jura gets a proper jab in, then Kawaki dies. He isn't technically immortal. He's going to live for a very long time, maybe forever, depending on how the Otsutsuki actually operate as a species, but he isn't fully immortal. He can be killed, he can die. So a lethal wound to his heart or maybe his brain would kill him on the spot. Or let's say his entire body was vaporized. So you want to have some level of defense there just in case there's a chance that he could die. And what's really funny about this and why Kawaki is really a fraud is because Amado goes on to say that this is essentially the way the ninja exercise chakra control. And he of course figured that it would suit a rationalist, quote-unquote rationalist like Kawaki, someone who of course isn't really fond of formal training. And of course, he saw that way back in chapter 15-9, I believe, when they had that scuffle between him and Boruto on the best method they could use to train. And of course, Kawaki wanted to get straight to the point and more so train by combat, something he learned from Jigen. And Boruto wanted to go the more traditional route and learn the fundamentals, the basics, and take it a bit slow. But Kawaki knows that they didn't have enough time to do so because code was still out there. And now that philosophy is being brought forth again because Kawaki wants to skip the entire training part of it, which is very funny because even Boruto told him to do so. He even said himself that they don't have enough time to train, so it doesn't make sense to pull out Naruto from Daikokuten. And even Boruto himself kind of follows that philosophy. Even though he does train for the things he now has, he's also taking shortcuts by the method of prescience through Kashinkoji. But of course, Kawaki has to be a bit extra. He doesn't train at all, apparently. And while I would agree that this is indeed rational given the current circumstances, he does point to something that has been consistent about Kawaki, which is that he doesn't care about being a ninja, and he doesn't value the ninja system. And I don't think it matters whether there's an immediate threat or not. Kawaki would still go the same route he's going down at this point in time, because he had over 3 years to learn how to properly control his chakra, and if he did, he wouldn't need all of this from Amado. He could simply adjust his chakra output mid-battle whenever he wants to. But because he didn't learn to properly do that for some reason, Amado is now finding a way to exploit it for his own gain. Now this will likely lead to a broader issue when this type of technology is broadcasted to the wider society, when it becomes public knowledge that one doesn't need to go through multiple years of ninja academy and then being a ninja and a jonin or chunin or whatever to climb the ranks to learn higher ranking jutsus and learn proper chakra control when they could simply get a toad or another device that's fashioned to attach to their bodies where they can then manipulate their chakra output mid-battle either by using some goggles or some mechanical device on their palm, whatever it is, you guys get the point. This would become a massive problem for the wider shinobi system. It's akin to everyone getting a personal language model on their palm that does everything for them. All the thinking, the calculating and searching and all that stuff. You don't need to do anything for yourself anymore because this chip can do it for you. That would of course cripple the education system in a very meaningful way because why go to school and learn when you can have this language model on your palm, this AI that does all the thinking for you and downloads all the data in the world and you have it at the palm of your hands anytime you want it. That is what it means to have something like this, and it could even go even further than that in the future. We don't know. So this, I think, is the very seed, the thing that starts to really disrupt the shinobi system in a meaningful way, which also, by the way, plays into Kobu's conversation in the recent chapters, saying that the feudal lords are questioning the very existence of these military bases, which are the hidden villages in the wider society. They don't need them anymore, which I think is very stupid. I mean, you guys literally live on a planet that has been invaded multiple times and you had to have people from these villages defend the planet, and you have no idea when more aliens are gonna come there to try to conquer the planet again, to try to dismantle your shinobi system because you now have better technology that can now handle the smaller level crimes. It's just very dumb. It just doesn't make sense to me. You're still gonna need these broken ninja to protect the world from these celestial beings. That's always going to be the case as long as there's a world outside of yours. Which is also why I thought that Kawaki's entire commentary on the existence of shinobi and the system itself didn't really make sense. It kind of sounds like when a guy, tries to sound smart but they end up sounding very stupid. Because for some weird reason, people thought that what Kawaki said about ninja was some mind-bending discovery or breakthrough. He's the new age Aristotle, apparently, for simply saying that ninja are the ones that die first. But of course, when you try to peel back the layers a tiny bit, there's nothing there. Of course, ninjas are the ones that die first. They are on the front lines. It's the same thing as saying, well, soldiers are useless and serve no purpose because they die first. The police force serves no purpose because they die first. First responders, serve no purpose because they get there first and they might end up dying before anyone else. It just doesn't make sense. Yes, the person who gets to the front line first usually dies first. And since of course ninja are the first line of defense and really the one and only line of defense when it comes to literal aliens from outer space, then of course they would be the ones to die first. That doesn't make them less valuable in any way. You could even argue that they're even of more value than anyone else because without them the planet is literally just prey. And you can't even look at it from the perspective of, yeah, ninjas simply just die when it comes to Yotsutsuki or any other being from outer space. So maybe Kawaki does have a point that, yeah, maybe the ninjas do show up first and that is why they die first, but they end up dying in vain to no avail. They never succeed. Because that's not true. Every single Otsutsuki that has come to that planet has died at the hands of a human. Every single one of them. So I would say if I were to go to court to defend the value of ninja to the shinobi world or just the planet at large, I would easily win that case against Kawaki or anyone else because the proof is in the pudding. But alas, technology does have a way of clouding the judgment of humans. So whether this becomes a wider societal phenomenon or whether Kawaki takes this to further embolden his position that the age of shinobi is over because he now has a few tricks that allows him to bypass the fundamentals of being a shinobi, I do think it's all interconnected and Amado plays a very important role in that.